Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you all for being here. And thank you to the City of Port Angeles for allowing us to use this space. I also want to thank the members of the League's Voter Service Committee for their efforts in organizing this event. You'll spot many of them in various places around the room, all wearing their League badge proudly. My name is Vicki Rudin. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and I'll be your moderator this evening. The League of Women Voters is a 98-year-old national nonpartisan political organization whose purpose is to encourage local citizens to register to vote, become well-informed citizens and voters, and participate in all levels of government. The League does not support or oppose candidates, factions, or political parties. The views expressed here tonight are those of the candidates and not of the sponsors of this debate. The League, however, does act in support of or in opposition to selected governmental issues which its members have studied. You can find more information about the League on the membership table in the lobby or by going to our website, which you can see on the banner in front of you. It is League of Women Voters' practice to hold forums only for primary races where there are 3 or more candidates. Under Washington State's top 2 primary system, the top 2 vote getters in each of the primary races that you'll be hearing tonight will advance to the November 6th general election ballot. We will be following the agenda you were given when you came in. If you don't have one, please raise your hand and a League member will bring you one, or look on over your neighbor's shoulder and read them. Our forum tonight will be in 2 parts. The first panel will feature the 3 candidates for Judge, District Court 1. After a brief break, we will have the 3 candidates for Clallam County Commissioner District 3. Each panel will follow the same basic outline. The candidates will make brief opening statements. Next, we'll take questions from the audience, and then the candidates will make their closing statements. We hope you will be thinking of the questions you want to ask the candidates as you listen to their opening statements. If you need a card to write on, hold up your hand and a League member will provide you one. That's just so you can take notes while you're preparing to ask your question. Before we begin, let's deal with a few important matters. First, please turn off all cell phones and devices that make noise. Please note that there are restrooms in the lobby, outside these chambers, and to your right as you go up. Also, a word about video recording. No non-League audio or video recording devices of any kind are permitted during this forum unless prior permission from the League has been received. As you can see, the League is recording the forum and the video will be posted on the League's website. We believe that it will also be available for viewing on Channel 21, the local public access channel, and if you have wave cable, you can see it that way. To make the most of our time, I ask you to kindly refrain from applauding or making any other noises which in any way interrupt our speakers. I'll be sure to give you a chance at the end of each panel to give a round of applause to the candidates. League members wearing name tags are located around the room. Please signal to them if you need assistance. Our timers this evening are Sue Erzin and Rebecca Miller. Wave your hands so they know where you're sitting. Okay. Their job is to make sure we stay within the time limits that have been established for each segment of our forum. Now we'll get on to the candidates for District Court 1 Judge. District courts are courts of limited jurisdiction, serving defined areas, both incorporated and unincorporated, within the counties. District courts have jurisdiction over both criminal and civil cases. Criminal jurisdiction includes misdemeanors and gross misdemeanor cases that involve traffic and non-traffic offenses. Those convicted of criminal offenses in district court may be sentenced up to 1 year in jail, a $5,000 fine, or both. Additionally, district courts hear small claims and civil suits and issue anti-harassment and domestic violence protection orders. The judge's term is for 4 years, the position is nonpartisan, and the annual salary in 2019 will be $164,313. There are 3 candidates before you this evening: Dave Neupert, Pam Lindquist, and Suzanne Hayden. Each candidate, in the order they filed for office, will be given up to 2 minutes for their opening remarks. We have asked the candidates to introduce themselves by covering the following information: their qualifications for serving in this office, how they intend to address the major challenges facing the district court's jurisdiction, and what their goals are for their first year in office. Candidates, please keep your eye on the timer so you can gauge your time, and we will begin with Dave Neupert.
Thank you, Vicki, and I want to thank the League for sponsoring this forum this evening, and for all of you folks for coming on as well. It's important to learn about judge candidates because it is a nonpartisan race, and it's a very important position within the law and justice community, I know. I did put some rack cards outside on the tables, and that'll give you more information about me and my background and my qualifications for this job. But briefly, I've been an attorney in practice in Clallam County for over 25 years now. I was the head of the Clallam Public Defender's Office for 4 of those years, and after that I spent 20 years in private practice. I was a senior partner at the Platt-Irwin law firm here in Port Angeles, handling mostly trial work in there, both civil and criminal cases. I have served as a judge pro tem in the district court for 20 years, and especially concentrating on that in the last 3 years. I was appointed as the interim presiding judge for district court in February of this year. So I do present this evening as the only candidate who has actual judicial experience in the district court, and I'd like to put that experience to good work for you folks going forward. You can also read more about my community involvement. I currently serve on the boards of Habitat for Humanity, Clallam County, as board president, Peninsula Behavioral Health, United Way of Clallam County, and the Peninsula College Foundation. So from my perspective, community involvement is almost as important as the judicial experience that I already have, because you need to be able to understand the challenges facing the community to be able to make good choices on the bench. I'm Dave Neupert, and I'm here this evening to get better acquainted with you folks and also to ask you for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Next, we'll hear from Pam Lindquist.
Hi. Is that gonna? Okay. Thanks. It wasn't echoing the same way. I'm Pam Lindquist. I'm also asking for your vote for district court judge. My qualifications are that my undergraduate degree is in economics from California State University, Northridge. I worked with the Navy in the contracts department in Groton, Connecticut for the sub base. After my time with the Navy, I went to law school in Madison, Wisconsin, and while I was in Wisconsin, I worked with the Court of Appeals and the Fond du Lac Prosecuting Attorney's Office. For 16 years, I've been here in Clallam County. For 7 years, I was a public defender in district court. While I was there, I got the mental health court established, and I was part of the team that got the DUI court established. After my time as a public defender in district court, I opened up my own law practice. There, I mostly focused on civil matters, family matters, but I also did fill in with the cities of Sequim and Port Angeles as a fill-in prosecutor in district court. I have a lot of experience in that courtroom, and what I would like to see change in that courtroom is have more community service involvement for offenders. Not in lieu of jail time, but for those people who can't afford and at this point are not allowed to be put those large legal financial obligations. So by doing that, we can have more community ties, strengthen the community, and try and heal this divide that's tearing us apart. That's why I'm running, and that's why I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. And next, Suzanne Hayden.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Hayden, and I'm also running for District Court 1 judge. Qualifications, I have served in every courthouse in Clallam County, including the Lower Elwha Tribal Court. Started off, all of us in public defender work, started off in District Court 1, then moved to Superior Court, and I was also District Court 2, working with Susan Owens in Forks, before she became a Chief Justice, or excuse me, a Supreme Court Justice. And the last 16 years I have focused solely on juveniles, so I've been working with the juveniles. At this point in time, it just seems that going back to District Court 1 is where I can make the most change and the most difference. There are some major challenges that are happening. One, of course, is that the law has changed and we can no longer impose fines on poor people, which is common sense. I mean, really do want them to drop off their, their food stamps at the front counter. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me when it was enforced. Another thing is that what I would like to be able to do is stop the revolving door for people that don't want to go in and out all the time. There are lots of programs that can be put in place. King County has a multi-county program to help reinstate driver's licenses for people with driver's licenses that are able to get them back. Thank you. So I want to be able to work in that kind of a program, talk to Jefferson County, and see what we can do for both of our counties. There are lots of different kinds of programs, and the first year is going to be implementing them. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for you to give us some help, if at any time you're having difficulty hearing any of the speakers during the entire evening, please raise your hands, because we can tend to relax a little and move back from the mic, and that doesn't help you at all. All right, it's now time to go on to the questions section. I want to thank you three candidates for your opening remarks. We will take as many questions as possible from you in the audience. Please come to the microphone, which is over there, and state your name and specify whom your question is for. You will have up to 30 seconds to ask your question, so the timers will be monitoring you as well. They'll hold up the stop sign if you use up that 30 seconds. A league member will hold the microphone for you. The candidates will have up to 1 minute to answer each question, so please consider this time limit when crafting your question. It may help you to stay within your 30 seconds if you write your question out beforehand and then read it when it's your turn at the mic. If you do not wish to come up to the mic, give your written question to one of our members, just wave it and they'll pick it up, and it will be read aloud by the league member for you. All candidates, even if the question is addressed to just one of them, will have an opportunity to respond to all the questions. I will then give each candidate the opportunity to respond to or rebut their fellow candidates' answers. They will be given up to 30 seconds for a brief response or rebuttal, or if they wish, they may waive their chance to respond, which means we can move on to more and more questions from you. I expect there'll be approximately 30 minutes for audience questions and candidate responses, but this is an estimate. If we run out of time before you get your question answered, we encourage the candidates to remain after this forum so that you may speak with them directly. And ready? People going to line up at the mic? I encourage you to. Okay. And while you were moving over to the mic, I will kick off this part of our forum with the first question. And this is for all three candidates. The question is, what is a feasible way for indigent criminals to provide compensation to the victims of their crimes? Dave, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Vicki. Well, the district court rules and the RCWs, the state law, provides for restitution to be paid to crime victims. And that's not a cost that is unduly imposed. It's a way of making a victim whole again. So the courts can require restitution to be made. There are occasions where if a victim agrees to a form of repayment other than just direct payment, it could be done with community service, for example. But the law does contemplate if there's a loss and there's damages, that loss needs to be recovered. My approach throughout district court the entire time that I've been in there has been accountability of folks that come through the court. And an important key to that is accountability so that victims can be made whole again. Some of the most tragic cases that I see from the bench are those involving acts of domestic violence. Those don't necessarily involve restitution being made, but there does involve, in my mind, a requirement that folks be held accountable and to understand that they're responsible for their action and always that there's consequences for those. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam, would you answer this question?
Well, the restitution obviously needs to be paid to victims. That's kind of first.
Closer to the mic.
Okay. That's kind of first and foremost, that we need to make sure that those victims get that restitution. That hasn't been affected by this law. There's also another victim, though, and that's the cost that these offenders are making on the community. And that's one aspect that has been affected by this new law. And that's one aspect where I believe that having meaningful community service that actually serves the community can help provide that restorative justice.
Suzanne?
Absolutely, we want to hold criminals accountable to their victims. There is no way that someone can steal $100 and think they're not going to pay back $100. But that being said, then there are the other collateral victims that people are talking about, domestic violence, where you can get the victim involved. And it would be really great to see how we could implement some kind of domestic family so that the victim and the perpetrator isn't the only one getting the treatment that we can also, but we can also ask victims to go to Healthy Families and get into some counseling as well. Those kinds of things are cycles within a family. It's not one person. And if we try to send one person back into a home where everyone else is unchanged, the cycle is difficult to stop. So we need to empower victims so that they feel like they have a voice and can change some things as well.
Thank you. Do any of you wish to rebut or comment further? You will have 30 seconds to do so. You would? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just on the aspect of domestic violence. I've been a domestic violence advocate. I've helped many people get the domestic violence restraining orders, also the family law issues that come out of domestic violence. There certainly is actual monetary restitution that needs to be made in these situations. It's not just a family dynamic. It's much more than that, and it needs to be treated with the severity that's there.
Thank you. Dave or Suzanne, do you have any further comment you wish to make?
No, thanks, Vicki.
I would like to briefly respond to that. Of course, everything that we're saying here today is going to be very quickly said within 30 seconds or 60 seconds. Of course, everything that we're talking about is very serious. Everything has much more layers than what we're talking about. But in the superficial time we're giving superficial answers.
Excuse me, you really have to put your mouth up to the mic because we can't hear back here. So
Okay.
just make sure you get real close.
I will huddle.
You can slide the base of it closer to you, too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to the first question from the person in line. Your name?
My name is Rachel Ringer, and I'm from Port Angeles. My question is about the bloated budget for District Court 1. I was wondering if you can explain, and this goes to all three of you, if you can explain the budget, what it's for, and also ways that you can reduce the costs.
Suzanne, we'll begin with you on this one.
Sure. There are lots of ways going into this courtroom that can be changed immediately. One of the things I would do is get rid of the probation calendar driven by the judge. Currently, we're paying a judge his salary to sit there and act as a probation officer, to have criminals come before him to see whether or not they're carrying out their sentence. We have people for that. Those are called probation officers. And if we give their job back to them, then we're paying a probation officer's salary, not a judge's salary. Additionally, there are sorry, just blanked. There are other calendars that I would like to consolidate. One of the things that can happen, there we go.
Pam, would you like to answer this next?
Okay. There is also a $65,000 pro tem in the budget for pro tems, and I don't think that's an appropriate number. That definitely seems bloated. You're paying for a judge, you get the judge. Also, I believe that the number of appointed public defenders for indigent defense can be reduced simply by trying to streamline the system and having like a facilitator or a brief meeting before the initial appearance before the judge, so that somebody can decide whether they actually need to have an attorney appointed or not, instead of just pushing it through.
Dave?
Thanks, Vicki. The district court budget is set annually by the Board of County Commissioners, and that's part of their decision on how they set priorities for spending countywide. What the district court provides for services through its professional staff, I wouldn't see any reason to reduce staff in the district court itself. Those folks are dedicated employees, and they do a good job, and they're highly efficient and effective in what they do. Ways that the court could save money, of course, would be making better use in the future of technology. One thing that I'm able to participate now, hearing traffic infractions. Folks can submit their statement electronically, and I can decide those cases when I'm in chambers working on other matters as a substitute judge. So that's a way that I've seen effectively a way of reducing costs on an actual basis, and I'll continue to look for ways going forward.
Thank you. Each of you has an opportunity to make a further 30-second comment or rebuttal if you wish. Does anyone?
Yes.
Okay, Suzanne, go first.
All of us put flyers and material out there. One page of my flyer specifically talks about the budget and how that can be done. Getting cooperative spirit between District Court 1 and 2, where the judges swap out one day a week, would also reduce a pro tem budget that's bloated very, very. This is the largest pro tem budget that District Court has ever had. And by having cooperation between the two district courts, we would eliminate that.
Do either of you wish to further comment on this? No?
I would, Vicki, just on the subject of pro temp judges. For my part, I don't have any conflicts hearing cases. It's only a rare event if it's somebody that I've actually represented previously during the course of my work. But for my part, I would have no conflict hearing, for example, public defender cases going forward, because I have enough distance between me and the public defender's office to be able to act independently.
Thank you. Our next question.
My name is Bill Atkinson, and I live in Port Angeles. And this is a question for Mr. Neupert. Dave, I'd like you to hear your take on what the community buzz is about Neupert v. Wade, the dog case, where that one of your dogs was attacked on Mr. Wade's property by his dog. And he got into a contest over the vet bills. And you filed that in Mr. Porter's court, even though you had a professional relationship with him and also a campaign relationship with him. And, excuse me?
Could you conclude your question, please?
It's very simple. All right. Anyway, and then the other thing is that your
No,
basis of your...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
One question.
Okay.
Later, you may be able to ask another question if
the same
time permits.
All right.
Dave?
Well, I'll give you the same answer, Bill, if you get up again. So from 4 years ago, we had a small claims case where our dog was injured by another dog. The owner wouldn't pay the vet bill, so we went to small claims court. Were awarded a judgment by a visiting judge and collected that judgment, and happy to say we donated the entire proceeds to Peninsula Friends of Animals. So for my part, again, it's about accountability and folks taking responsibility for their actions. And if that meant we went to court in front of a visiting judge from Jefferson County to get it worked out, that's the way it went.
Do either of you, Pam or Suzanne, wish to comment on that question? No. No? Either of you? Oh, okay. Let's go to our next question.
Hi, my name is Preston Kays. I live in Sequim. As you guys know, I have special interest in drug offenders in the community. All of you have said we have to stop the revolving door in the legal system. All of you have said we have to make offenders responsibility. Nobody has said how in the world are we going to do that? Because this whole legal system, if you go into district court and you haven't been there before, you'll see a total lack of respect for the judicial system.
Pam, you can take this one first.
Okay. I think that there definitely is a degradation of public confidence in the judicial system, and I think a lot of that is not seeing results. One of the areas where I believe that we can really make a difference with substance abuse issues and drug offenses is by making sure that the messages that are being given to offenders is consistent. We need to make sure that the bench is not practicing medicine, but allowing the experts who know how to do this, do that, and we would be back in the bench, and the court's position would be to back them up. There's a lot of work that has been done. There's a lot more that needs to be done, and I think we just have to continue to try. But we need to have a consistent message across the entire group of people dealing with these offenders.
Suzanne?
When I was in district court, and granted this was probably about 20 years ago, I used to send DUIs and possession of marijuana gross misdemeanors over to the adult drug court, and people would be held accountable and go through 2 years of the adult drug court. I would like to look back into that as a possibility. I don't know whether there is just a lack of cooperation now between the district court and superior court, or how that is going to be managed. It might be that we would keep those things in-house in district court. I'm not sure about the complete feasibility of that either. Part of keeping people responsible in sentencing is to give them some meaningful community service work instead of just having them go wash police cars, which is perfectly.
You can finish your sentence.
I would give them something more along the lines of going to get their GED, and there are scholarships to do that. They don't have to pay for that. There are things like going up to Peninsula College to get job retraining. If we can get economic situations stabilized, it might be easier to mainstream a person back into the community.
That is a run-on sentence. Dave, would you answer this
I will,
question?
Vicki. And Preston, there's a generational difference, you know, from when you and I were growing up near Dollfield in North Seattle. And I'll give you an example. I was on the bench recently on a pretty warm day, and there was a young man in court on his case. And I called his case, and he came up to talk to me about it, and he's wearing a tank top and shorts. And for all I knew, that was his best tank top. But I waved him forward, and I said, young man, would you go out on a job interview dressed the way that you are right now? He thought about it, he goes, no. I said, of course you wouldn't, because you wouldn't be showing respect when you went out, if you went to a job interview dressed like that. I said, it's important that you show respect when you come to court as well. And he didn't know that. He honestly didn't know any better when he came to court. So it does, that sort of learning doesn't start with the court, but it's important within the court to emphasize by showing respect to people that they deserve respect, and that they can learn to show respect as well. That's not a solution, because it's not an ultimate solution, but it's a good start.
Thank you. Do either of you wish to make a further comment or a rebuttal? No? Okay. Our next question.
Over here.
Do you have one over there?
My name is Eugene Turner, and I live in Port Angeles. Financial responsibility was discussed. I was the unlucky recipient of a ticket for not having my seatbelt on. I attended the challenge court that one can do, and after 30 minutes of the high-tech system not working at all 25 of us were dismissed without a single penny's payment. Number one, is that legitimate? And if so, it's not good for financial responsibility.
The first one on this will be Dave.
Well, thanks, Dr. Turner. I guess you could let your conscience be your guide on that as well. Apart from that, certainly no, technology is not perfect. It's getting better, but you know, if you had your day in court and you showed up and you were prepared and the case couldn't proceed through no fault of yours, you know, I could see that happening, other than inconveniencing 25 folks by telling them you need to, you know, take out another half a day out of your time, especially with working folks, to come back on that ticket. So the responsibility of the court is to make sure that it's managed efficiently and effectively and economically, and that's what I'm looking to do.
Pam?
Well, I don't know the specifics there. It does not sound like something that would be out of line. If you're ready, you are there, you're ready to present your case, your side of the case, the other side is not there for whatever reason, often that is what happens. Although, I grew up on a farm. I'm always thinking if technology breaks down, you can go low tech. You can try and make something work some other way. Technology is great when it works, and when it doesn't, we have to have a backup.
Suzanne?
It sounded to me as though you were saying that there were technical difficulties. Am I correcting?
That is correct. The machine was supposed to bring up each case, did not work for 30 minutes before a decision was made.
Part of the problem with technology, of course, we all know that it's wonderful until it isn't. But part of what happens in a court is that these are courts of record, and they have to be able to keep a record of what is happening in any kind of a case, what is being said. It's unfortunate that we no longer have the person that sits there with the dictaphone and the typing machine and takes it all down word for word. That would be the alternative, the fallback position, but those are bygone days. And I think to protect your rights, they would have to reschedule it, which is really inconvenient for everyone, for the 25 people, also for the court system that now has to do 25 more cases again. I don't know how else, maybe a really heartfelt apology.
That made us no less guilty.
Thank you. Each of you has an opportunity to add a 30-second comment. Do any of you wish to?
I don't. Thanks, Vicki.
They're not sure.
Our next question, is there one over there?
Hi, okay, sorry. Yeah, you hold it, good. I've been known to like those, so thank you for
Give
for
your
those
name.
of us who don't know, Laura O'Neill. For those of us who don't know, could you please explain the necessity of a pro tem judge and what kind of cases that judge might hear?
Is that directed to all of them or
Sure.
specifically to?
Yeah, just an educational for me.
Okay, then let's begin with Pam.
Okay. A pro tem judge is someone who can fill in for the judge. There's several situations where that would be necessary. One, if the judge is ill or on vacation, there needs to be someone to fill in for him. Also, if there's a conflict, say this was a former client and it's something that the judge would know about, he would have to say, I can't hear this case, I can't guarantee that I would be impartial, so that's when a pro tem would step in. There's also another situation where a pro tem would be very useful, and that is sometimes the court gets overbooked. There's a lot of cases going through, and civil cases will often be booked because there's a criminal case. But once again, if you have everything already, you're ready to go, and you've already been bumped one time, then it makes sense to have a pro tem come in to hear that case as well.
Suzanne?
There are actually two courtrooms. I've had the privilege of having a case. It was a criminal case in the old part of the courthouse, in the old courtroom. And I think that it would be very economical, actually, to have pro tems hearing civil cases when the presiding judge is in criminal court. Criminal cases always take precedence, but we don't want to get a backup of the civil cases. And I think that a one-day trial is not going to have anywhere near the budget that's currently being given. As long as a judge is, for the most part, showing up and doing her own work in her own courtroom, there would be pro tems or substitutes only during vacations or sick days or things like that.
Dave, your 1 minute.
Thank you. Under the rules that apply to the courts, folks, a district court judge is prohibited from hearing a case in which the judge's former client is involved. That doesn't present a challenge to me hearing any public defender cases. Another way that a pro tem judge is necessary is if an affidavit of prejudice is filed against a judge. If you get assigned to a judge for a case, as a criminal case, civil case, you can file a piece of paper that says, I don't want this judge to hear my case, I want another judge. And under those circumstances, then a pro tem judge or a substitute judge or a visiting judge must be brought in to hear that case. So that's another circumstance under which, Ms. O'Neill, that judges pro tem are required to be brought into the court.
Each of you has an opportunity to add another 30 seconds to your response if you wish to.
Yes. Another way to save money with pro tems is to have that 1 day a week cooperation between District Court 1 and 2. If we swap out 1 day a week, then we cover each other's conflicts or affidavits or anything like that. And that would take care of a lot of that budget. Additionally, my opponent here is consistently saying that because we have Pam and I have had individuals, then we're going to have more conflicts is the implication. And that's because my opponent is representing corporations and not people.
Any comment from Dave or Pam on this?
Well, I'd like to. Not surprisingly. I have one client right now. My client is the Peninsula Housing Authority. And if you haven't noticed, the Peninsula Housing Authority is constructing a major redevelopment at Mount Angeles View off of Lawrence Boulevard, which will include 13 units that are dedicated to homeless families with children who are going to be transitioning into permanent housing. I'm proud of that association.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? Well, then I have, oh, come ahead.
Rachel Ringer from Port Angeles. I was reading the different information that was out on the table, and one of them, which was on Dave Neupert's, says that you're an appointed pro tem judge. I was wondering if you could explain that. How can you be appointed? Can you explain, please?
Yeah, Ms. Ringer, the way that a person becomes a pro tem judge is by appointment of the elected judge. So I was first appointed as a pro tem judge, I guess about 20 years ago, when Judge Doherty was on the bench in District Court 1, and then was appointed or reappointed by his successor after that. So the only way I'm aware of that a person becomes a judge pro tem is by being appointed by an elected judge.
Pam or Suzanne, do you wish to add anything on that?
Yes. That's a disingenuous argument. Judges are only appointed by the governor. Mr. Neupert was not appointed by the governor, saying that the presiding judge appointed him is a misuse of the language. Appointing has a very specific legal term, as does, it doesn't say that he's appointed a pro tem judge. It says he is appointed as the acting presiding judge. Presiding judge is also a term of art. He is not the presiding judge. Mr. Porter is the presiding judge. Saying he's appointed is incorrect. Saying he is an acting presiding judge, there is no such thing.
Pam, do you wish to make a comment? Dave, you can make a 30-second rebuttal if you wish.
Thank you. There was a press release issued by Clallam County District Court 1 on February 13th, 2018 of this year. And it says, earlier this week, I was asked this from the elected judge, I was asked to return to active duty for 54 days. During my absence, I have appointed Dave Neupert to be the acting presiding judge. Mr. Neupert is my primary pro tem court commissioner. He has completed judicial college and has a wealth of legal experience. Mr. Neupert is uniquely qualified to serve as the acting presiding judge, and I have complete confidence in his ability to manage the court while I'm out of the country.
Suzanne,
briefly
you have 30
respond.
seconds.
Mr. Porter can say anything he wants to, and the newspaper may print it. It doesn't make it correct.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Go ahead.
So, I'm confused then.
Name
So- Laura O'Neill. Sorry. Do I? So, But I'm confused because you're clearly doing the job. So regardless of what we call it, how come you get to do it and let's say I don't? I mean, you're doing it. So what do we call, what?
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to have a new question, not a follow-on to this. Our procedures are that if you want to continue the discussion with a candidate, the break is an appropriate time to do that.
Sorry.
If you have a new subject, then I would welcome that question. Anyone with a question on a new subject?
Real quick one.
Name?
Tom Schindler, Port Angeles area. Two tragedies of justice. Which is the worst? Falsely convicting somebody or failing to convict somebody who's guilty?
Is that directed to all three candidates?
Yeah.
Right. Suzanne, we'll start with you on this one.
Well, I can tell you the entire purpose of having public defenders is because of people falsely convicted. Gideon versus Wainwright. Yeah, Gideon versus Wainwright is the benchmark case where Mr. Gideon had lots of quarters because he was about to go do his laundry, and he was put in prison because he went to trial and was convicted of breaking into a change box and having all these quarters. So he was innocent, and the Supreme Court said he should have had a lawyer who could have explained that better. So, so for most people, I think it would be if I was innocent and ended up in prison. Wow. Much less if you're innocent and end up on death row. Look at all the DNA exonerations we've had.
Dave, will you take this one
Thank you,
next?
Vicki. I appreciate that question and the reference to the death penalty. I was one of 2 defense attorneys on the last death penalty case to be tried in this county. And that's the most serious piece of litigation that I hope to ever be involved in. And what I came away with was an even better understanding that the greater risk under our system, Mr. Schindler, is that if an innocent person is convicted, rather than a guilty person be let free. Appreciate that question.
Pam?
Well, I think I have to agree with both of my opponents here. I have to say that the falsely convicted innocent man is the greater tragedy there. Because right there we're dealing with the loss of liberty, the loss of property. These are the things that we hold most dear, and they have to be jealously guarded. Where I see the biggest tragedy with the guilty person who gets found innocent is that erodes the public confidence in our justice system. And that's what keeps us going. So we have to be careful to make sure that we make the right decision.
Each of you could have another 30 seconds if you wish to make more comments on this.
Thank you.
No. Is there another question?
Hi, my name is Christina Cunningham, and I wanted to ask you what you see as the largest issue that you're seeing in the court system today, and what would you do or how would you approach dealing with that issue?
Let's have this started by Pam.
I think the largest issue that I see is lack of respect to the court and a lack of respect from the court. By treating every person who comes before the court with respect, by making sure that everybody who comes there gets a fair and full hearing so they know that they've been heard, by making sure that the court presents itself with the type of demeanor that's required for that office to bolster the public confidence, and providing a rigorously honest, impartial, and independent judiciary. That's what we need in the court system, and that's, I think, where we need, that's the biggest issue and where I can help the most.
Suzanne?
I believe the biggest issue confronting the courts is the opioid crisis. In district court, we're not going to have felony drug charges, but in district court we'll certainly have a lot of the other fallout from drug addled people, which is domestic violence and driving under the influence and all of those other kinds of things. And I do believe that the court has to start doing something different, and something different maybe to look at rehabilitative courts instead of just punishing someone. Punishing someone makes them angry and holds them accountable, and if that's all we want, that's great. But if we want to make a difference, if we want people to change, then we have to do something different. We cannot keep doing the same thing and expect people to leave fully rehabilitated.
Dave?
Thank you. I know from my time on the bench in district court that the biggest challenge facing us in there, the most serious cases, are domestic violence cases, and in particular acts of assault involving domestic violence. And what's fueling most of those acts, from what I've seen, not opioids, it always has been and it continues to be alcohol abuse. And that's what's fueling people. And there are alcohol treatment programs available, but that still is a terrific challenge here, and a lot with the driving cases. Alcohol abuse is woven throughout the cases that come before the judge in the district court. So a way of dealing with that is implementing and maintaining the 24/7 sobriety program, which I use, which requires folks to check in twice a day with law enforcement to provide a breath sample to make sure they're not consuming alcohol.
Thank you. We're going to stop at that point because we have used up our 30 minutes that we've allotted for questions. Again, I encourage you to talk with the candidates afterwards if there's something that they have not adequately answered for you. We'll now move on to our candidates' 2-minute closing statements, and we will reverse the order from their opening statements and begin with Ms. Hayden.
Again, I'm Suzanne Hayden. I'm running for District Court 1 Judge. I would appreciate your vote. I think that most people don't know what to look for in a judge. You want to look for someone with integrity. You want to look for someone who does not even have the appearance of impropriety, someone who can be fair, someone who can go in and make judgment calls about what is working and what is not working, and get rid of what's not working and implement trial and experience what is going to work. Thank you.
Pam Lindquist.
I've worked on both sides of the aisle as a prosecutor, as a public defender. I've worked criminal, I've worked civil. I've been the domestic violence advocate, helping people get those restraining orders and knowing just a piece of paper is not going to keep them safe. I know that courtroom, I know the needs of our community, and I believe I can serve those needs because I have experience in the legal experience in Washington and in other jurisdictions. I can bring some of that experience in and try and increase the efficiency of the court while always making sure that we keep an eye on the public safety and the rights of the individual. And that's why I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Neupert.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters again for having this forum. I appreciate the work the moderator did, that the timers did, and all the volunteers did in bringing this event together. I think it's worked well. And I certainly appreciate the audience being here this evening. You're here because you care about this community, and it's important to you what happens going forward. and how we can continue to improve and strengthen our community. I know that the job of district court judge is an important part of moving this community forward and of bringing folks together so that we can look in common for solutions to these issues that are facing us every day. I'd invite you to take some of my literature home with you. It'll tell you more about my background, my commitment to public service work in this area, and it'll also tell you how to get to my Facebook page where you can leave a question or a comment or anything that you want to feel within the bounds of propriety. But thanks again, folks, for everything that you do to improve this community. I'm willing to do my part as your next district court judge. I'm Dave Neupert, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Although we're going to be thanking these candidates and allowing them to leave the panel, I hope none of you leave. If you need to stand up, fine, but our break is going to be just 5 minutes, and then we will be hearing from our next panel. Thank you all for participating. Now we're on to the candidates for Clallam County Commissioner District 3. The Board of Clallam County Commissioners consists of 3 members. Each is elected solely by voters living within that commissioner's district. District 3 runs roughly from Valley Creek in Port Angeles to the county's western boundary. According to the Clallam County Charter, the board is responsible for the legislative functions and most executive functions of county government, including strategic planning, determining priorities, setting policies, establishing budgets, and serving on regional and statewide boards and committees. The commissioner's term is 4 years. The position is partisan, and the annual salary in 2019 will be $86,286. We'll be following the same format that we used in the previous panel. Again, there are 3 candidates before you this evening: Bill Peach, Howard, Mike Doherty, and Dale Wilson. Each candidate, in the order they filed for office, will be given up to 2 minutes for their opening remarks. We've asked the candidates to introduce themselves by covering the following information. What are your qualifications for serving as county commissioner? How do you intend to address the major challenges facing Clallam County? And what are your goals for the first year of this term of office? Candidates, keep your eyes on the timers so you can gauge your time accurately. And we'll begin with Bill Peach.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to learn your values and the things that are important. And I do appreciate that I've been able to serve you as your current county commissioner and look forward to serving you again. I've been married 46 years. During that period of time, you do learn about give and take. And I've got to tell you that that's an approach that is currently taking place with you county commissioners. We are working together by combining transparency and collaboration. It's going to be important because there's some issues that are up in front of us dealing with. Issues such as homelessness, such as the heroin epidemic, such as where we're going with regard to affordable housing. And there isn't a single one of those issues that a single county commissioner can solve. In fact, it is a collaboration with the community, and it's a number of things that you put together at the same time to help work on those issues. So I do appreciate the fact that I've got some experience. I actually have a fair amount of experience here in Clallam County. I came here straight out of college. I was in the Army for a bit. And after college, I learned some of the values of this district, of District 3. And one of those values is independence. You inherit that by simply living in an environment where change occurs quite a bit. Change like what happened to the electricity anyway. And those kinds of issues people pull together on. And that's something that I'm very familiar with. I look forward very much to your questions. Tough questions, please.
Thank you. Next we'll hear from Mike Doherty.
Thanks, Vicki. Thanks to all of you for coming, and thanks to Lee for putting on this forum. My name is Mike Doherty. Some of you may remember I served several terms as a county commissioner, and because of that, I think my record reflects leadership, results, and also during a time when there was more trust in government. I think all of us would agree that from the top down, there's some major issues about trusting government. And I think that if we can't solve that issue at the local level, then we're even in worse problems. Presidents can come and go, but local government as an institution, being closest to the people, I think has an extra duty to build trust. And I think my record in the past shows that we were able to do that. During the most recent serious fiscal crisis, the recession related mostly to homes, this board was probably the only one in the state, maybe there were two, but probably the only one that had balanced budgets. We actually slightly expanded a number of services, public service, health, social service. We kept a healthy enough reserve in the road fund and the general fund that we were very unique, where we would have a match for other state and federal grants, and most local governments couldn't compete with us, so we got more than our share. I think my record shows that my peers trusted me. If you go to my website, there's a little green card out on the table, and it tells you how to get to the website, mikedoherty.info. And then there's a little handout that will tell you a little bit about this trust issue in the way that how many times and how many boards did my peers elect me to represent them, like on 5 county boards, 2 county boards, and in some cases I was elected to represent all those elected officials who can have some great egos for over a decade, because I was fair, I portioned money, and in some cases it was hundreds of thousands of dollars in meetings. Also, the number of gubernatorial appointments that I had, the Association of County honored me numerous times. Broadband, Criminal Justice Treatment Account Panel, Interoperable Communications, and a number of other major boards where I represented all the counties in Washington State. Thank you.
Thank you. Our third candidate is Dale Wilson.
Thank you. My name is Dale Wilson, and some of you may be getting a little warm. There's some wonderful little hand fans out front if you want to pick one up and use it. And I'm going to go lightly on my qualifications tonight, because at the very bottom in fine print it'll show you all about the protocol, and every article that's ever been written, every opinion that I registered is still available at Protocol Publishing. And also on Papa TV, I host a public affairs show that interviews the movers and shakers in the community, and you'll see that I am up on the issues facing the community. Now, as far as qualifications, I have a degree from the University of Tennessee in journalism. I have a master's degree in organizational communications from Murray State University in Kentucky. In that program, we learned and studied in depth about motivation, team building, persuasive speaking, and how to get teams to focus on goals, and how to make goals those that challenge and also motivate us. So some of the challenges facing the county. Finances. You know, we have a tax scheme, not tax scheme, but we have a, we're all going to pay taxes. All of these property owners are going to pay taxes, and we expect our leaders to spend these taxes wisely. As you know, if you've read any of the articles on protocol, I think that we have abused much of our taxes, especially when it comes to the Opportunity Fund. I think that we have a challenge to deal with the homelessness all over the county. I think that we have a real serious problem with joblessness in the county, and both of my opponents have had 30 years or more to solve some of this joblessness. And right now, the average income for Clallam County individually is right at minimum wage. Thank you.
Thank you. Were you able to hear, Dale? I was experiencing some feedback up here, and I don't know if you were as well. It's okay? Okay. Well, thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. We now will go to the question period, and we'll follow the same procedures as with our previous panel. Is there anyone who wasn't here then? Okay, because I don't want to go through all of the rigmarole again, telling you what to do if you already know. Again, you have 30 seconds to ask your question, and no immediate follow-ons. The candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question, and I hope that we will be able to hear all your questions. Please keep in mind that we'll give everyone in the audience the chance to ask a question before taking follow-ups or multiple questions from the same person. If we run out of time before you get your question answered, we've encouraged the candidates to remain afterwards so that you can talk directly with them. While somebody's already up there, which is great, but nevertheless, I have a question I want to ask them. What course of action should our rural county take to increase job opportunities? And Bill, we'll start with you.
I think one of the things that we need to recognize is the transition from a natural resources economy to a different economy. We do have a tremendous resource in the forests, and I'm on actually the Board of Natural Resources that provides policy for the DNR. An issue that I see is the amount of land. You know, it's 583,000 acres out of 1.2 million that's dedicated for endangered species. What happens if it catches on fire? So there's a need for us to take a hard look at forest management and the natural resources as we look at our alternatives.
Mike?
Generally, I've supported the concept that the EDC could represent the public entities, and so when I was on board, we put in an amount of money each year proportional, more than the cities typically, and that was sort of the focus. But we also had some other activities, and one was called the Resource Conservation Development Council. It was one of those boards that I headed for over a decade, and we had a number of grants, relatively small, 15, 20, 25,000. They got up to 160 some, $1.6 million. So there were some larger grants, and they had to do generally with employment. So there was small agriculture, broadband, some other areas that were small, but the EDC was the main focus of a community effort and initiatives. Broadband, I think, is integral to almost anything we're going to be doing in the future, whether it's distance learning, enhancing basic education, place-bound people learning work skills, and encouraging new people to come to this area, either to start new businesses or to expand existing businesses. Thanks.
Dale?
Thank you. Jobs for the rural areas. I think, and my friend Bill will agree, that tourism has really been the lifeblood of Forks since this Twilight series came out. And I've been down there a lot lately, and it's amazing how many kids are still, not just kids, but those that were kids when the movies came out, and they're still coming in and spending money in the shops and staying in the hotels. So, especially with my background in radio and television, I really do believe that if we could put together a film commission, a really full functional film commission, that would be a one-stop shopping for people that they wanted to do a film here, and so they could get their catering, their lodging, their electricians, their carpenters, all at one stop. And so that about 100 miles from here is Vancouver, BC, and they are the #3 market for filming feature-length movies. We can do that here. We can also get into alternative energy forms. You may have heard me talk about the hydrogen fuel cell. Those are going to be the future, and it's going to be up to us to move it in, especially when we realize that if the big shake comes, we're going to be separated in 15 different islands in the county, and each one of those is going to need energy.
Each of you have an opportunity for a 30-second comment or rebuttal. Do any of you want to do it? Bill?
Yeah, the governor's program, the Emerald program, provides for economic development zones. Clallam County was superior in the applications to the governor, in as much as we ended up with 10 different zones. And what was very interesting is no competition between those 10 zones. That was very impressive, and I'm confident that's going to provide an opportunity. It is a way for somebody to invest in an area that is not doing well economically and receive a benefit in the form of deferred taxes.
Mike or Dale, do you have a further comment?
A couple of points. One, I've been working with a group of seniors down in Port Townsend mostly, but trying to build out an electric vehicle charging station network around the peninsula. And as you know, BMW money just added 6 or 7 new chargers heading west. So So there's still a gap south of Forks. I think we should feature Native American tribes more. I've tried to propose a number of times a 5-nation vacation, the 4 tribes in our county, and then a trip over to the Provincial Museum. Certainly enhance some of the tribal arts that we have, and I think that's a great attraction for particularly seniors with a little discretionary money would come to this area if we could just package it.
You know, all too often we describe ourselves to the wider world as being a distressed county. How many of you feel distressed tonight? Neither do I.
A little warm.
Except for the heat, right back to the same. So let's think about this for a second. Recently, about a year ago, First Federal went public, and their challenge was to sell $130 million worth of bonds. And that's the first people that got in line were their depositors. Who knew there was $130 million liquid available on the peninsula? And we see there's capital here, we just need ideas. So there's capital here, we just need the ideas and leadership to get it spent properly.
We're trying to keep it all balanced. Again, if you have any problem hearing anyone, raise your hand. And I don't know if there's a signal for feedback or not, but I think some people are experiencing that. All right, first question in line. Name?
Roger Feit from the East End. 5 years ago, there was about a 500-page report on the misdeeds and crimes committed by county employees in the Department of Community Development. And I asked specifically Mr. Beach, have you read that report? And could you tell us what the county commission has done about that report?
I am very familiar with the report. In fact, I have access to the unredacted version of the report. The proposal that I have is that we change the charter. Did you know that elected officials are not bound by the personnel policies in Clallam County? The day that that was put in place, there may have been a good reason for it. But had that been in place, the incident that you're talking about would have been handled in a completely different way.
Mike, will you take that one next?
Well, I disagree. I did read the report, and I couldn't get a second vote among my colleagues at the time to do something about it. So there at least, I think it's proven if you go read the report, and I read the unredacted version, which Bill should have been able to have access to. But a couple of felonies, gross misdemeanor, there were some serious matters there. And I think the personnel department, prosecuting attorney, some others besides the commissioners should have been concerned. I asked the commissioners when I had left office, would they please look into it? Asked a number of agencies to look into how they would have managed that department given those problems, but the current board didn't pick up that concern either. So in a way, you're condoning behavior in the report if you don't do something about it. And I thought that at the least a letter of reprimand or censure, there were at least 4 things you could do under the statute. But it's difficult when you have an independently elected official, but there were some measures that could have been taken.
Dale?
Thank you. You already know I didn't see a copy of that, or you would have seen a copy of it in the protocol. I want to take issue too with something that Bill just talked about. The electeds are not under the personnel policy. Well, no, the electeds answer directly to the electors, to you people. We do not want the elected leaders to be under the thumb of a board of commissioners or of a county administrator. The voters know how to take care of people that are not doing the job or not doing the job correctly. So we don't want to have an occasion where we put the elected leaders underneath somebody that's under the board of commissioners. There's just too much power there, folks. If we were to, we're going to have a new county administrator soon. If he was one of the Machiavellian type that decided he wanted to exercise greater control than he's allowed, then he could bring anybody that did not bow to him under this personnel policy, and the papers would run it through there, and you may or may not know what the real true story was. So let's be real careful about dinkering with the charter.
Thank you. Each of you can make a further 30-second comment on this issue. Do any of you wish to?
I'm happy to. You made your point very clear, Mike, at the last year of your turn about how you felt that the action that should have been taken did not take place. The fact is that the legal advice we had was that.
Talk into your mic.
Thank you. Was that we could not. And the key issue was that the electeds are not bound by the personnel policies. Sexual harassment, fraud, etc. are issues that because it's not part of the personnel policy, that we have no ability to manage.
Well, there are two specific statutes that could have addressed this situation, state statutes, regardless of the wording in the charter. But there's wording in the charter, and I was the chairman of the charter committee, so, and the implementing commissioner in the 70s when the charter had been passed from the Board of Freeholders. Voters passed it, and it came to the Board of Commissioners. So things like merit, hiring, ethics, those are in the charter. So there's wording in there that one could use if you wanted to. Now, ironically, a prosecutor in this case, the prosecutor
close to the mic,
said that there was nothing he could do in the one case, the one we're talking about. Later, when the county treasurer was under some pressure, ironically, the same prosecutor found 4 things that the county could do. And I remember one time Commissioner Beach telling me, when we talked about it briefly, he said, that woman committed a felony, and I'm not going to stand for it. Does anybody remember anything ever was done about that felony?
Okay. Dale, do you have a further 30-second comment?
Yes, I'm going to have to try to shoehorn this one in. We are on the topic of the county charter. Right now, there's a plan afoot to put the finance all under a newly created department called the Finance Department, and have one chief financial officer for the county. And this will remove the statutory and constitutional officers that are now supposed to be on that, the assessor and the appraiser and the treasurer. These guys want to remove, the one of mine far left, wants to remove all of these statutory constitutional officers and put one person in charge, and that person would be under the direction of the Board of Commissioners.
Our next question.
Jim McLaughlin from the Joyce area. How do you see our county's criminal justice budget evolving during your term? Presuming each of you are elected, I'd like to ask that of each candidate. And also, does it include any type of renovations to the corrections facility?
Dale, you'll go first on this one.
Well, you know, I have watched over the last few years how the criminal justice budget has grown and grown and grown, mostly with respect to the county prosecutor's office. And I know that the county prosecutor is now prosecuting the misdemeanor crimes for the city of Sequim and for the city of Port Angeles, or rather, he contracted to prosecute those crimes, and I've got a list of hundreds that he has refused to prosecute, even though the law enforcement and the Sheriff's Department has given him good cases. So where that money is going to, well, somebody is going to hire 4 or 5 deputy prosecuting attorneys to look after our prosecuting attorneys and keep him out of trouble. They're not doing very well at it. But the problems that we're having are growing in all communities. Because of the joblessness, there creates hopelessness. With hopelessness, you're going to have crimes, and with crimes, you're going to have an exploding criminal justice program. I think that our sheriffs and our police do a pretty good job with it. I think that our superior courts do a pretty good job with it, and I'll have to see what is before me when it comes time to talk about that budget.
Bill, will you take this second? I'm jumping around. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you very much. 10 years ago, that cost center was about $400,000. Today, it's about $1.5 million. The issue that counties are managing is unfunded mandates. We're receiving direction on how to treat people in the court system, but no compensation. It's only a matter of time before the counties, Washington Association of Counties, makes it very clear to the legislature that this can't continue. Another issue that I see is that there is a better approach to treating people that have drug issues than throwing them in jail. And I personally support drug court. Your question with regard to the facilities change, we're right now working on the roof that's over the jail.
Mike?
So I think this shows the difference between myself and the incumbent. Instead of some words, promises, I actually got involved in solving these problems. My peers, other county commissioners, elected me to be the rep for all the counties on the interoperable communications system for the state, for law order safety, officer safety, all of that. Criminal Justice Treatment Account Panel, that's the treatment money that goes to the treatment through the drug courts. The State Drug Court Planning Committee, and then the group that funded that with federal money as drug courts develop. There were a couple of other groups where I was involved in the criminal justice, public safety arena as a county commissioner. I was also asked to be an author in a text called The Criminal Justice System in Washington State that went out to all the high schools. So I think my peers elected me to those positions to represent all the counties because they had some faith in what I would do, doing my homework and speaking up for counties, both large counties and rural counties. And I think that is a good credential for being back in office. Thank you.
Dale or Bill, do either of you wish to use 30-second rebuttal?
30 minutes? Great.
30 seconds.
Now, part of this problem is going to be solved by the Supreme Court decision that did away with what was infamously known as the pay or appear warrants. A lot of times people out at Neupert would get picked up on a pay or appear warrant on a Friday night. That deputy would have to drive them all the way back to town, put them in jail for 3 nights at $75 a night. And that was doing nothing for anybody because he was just going to tell the judge Monday morning, I still don't have a job and I still can't pay my fines. So a lot of that is going to go away, that unnecessary lodging people in jail unnecessarily. The people that need to be in jail are the dangerous people, not just the ones we don't like.
Bill or Mike?
I think there's merit to taking a look at the process that we use in the court system. I'll give you an example. We took a look at when the public defender steps in and asks the question, is there a change to the timeline and does that result in a change to our costs? And the answer was yes. If in fact the prosecuting attorney looks at the case and says, I don't want to deal with this, you have made an error in the processing of this individual, why in the world are we already engaged with somebody and receiving costs on a case that won't go to in court?
Mike, you have 30 seconds.
Generally, I'd agree with both points of view, but I'd also add that disproportionately, the Board of Commissioners currently has been looking at the public defense budget. Meanwhile, the prosecuting attorney's budget has skyrocketed. Now you're looking at a current discussion about getting out of one of the most recent agreements the board just passed several months ago. And it's, what, $400,000 deficit, I think, to the county because of that agreement. So should have taken a better view early on and have parity. Look at the prosecuting attorney's budget also.
We have another mic over here. Is there someone who wants to ask a question there?
I was going to say those ladies were here first. But,
we'll go back and forth.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to not talk about budgets or crime. My question has to do with high-speed internet. I live near Joyce. Elaine Baker. I live near Joyce. My husband and I have a small business, highly dependent on the internet. We have deadlines, we have webinars, we have reports, and so on. And we have kind of a workaround, but I can't tell, it's a little bit better than dial-up, but very unreliable. Can't tell you how many times I've had to drive into town.
Can you, one sentence wrap up?
Okay, what are you going to do about getting me some high-speed internet?
Mike, will you start this one?
So again, that was one of the committees I mentioned where my colleagues, county commissioners around the state, appointed me to be on a state broadband committee. And my interest, of course, was rural counties. So I became fairly knowledgeable for somebody my age and my familiarity with broadband. But we have 2 sons who are engineers in that field. And so I had some support back home, plus what I could learn from the the county IT department and the state commissioner's office. So I think I was effective at it, and you have to get into those circles as a county commissioner to have an impact. So when we had the OpScan project, it was a $6 million proposal. We passed 2 hurdles. The state wanted to give it to Tukwila because they have a sales tax base that could sustain that broadband system for law enforcement. Well, I went down and had a little meeting with Gary Locke, and he saved the day, gave it back to Clallam County. So there are things where you can help in that field. Now today, Kilmer has a press release out on federal government interest in solving that. But we can help do that on our own here. Senator Murray came and opened the connection from 112 over to 101 that brought redundancy into our area. So getting a personal contact with governors, senators, helps us get a little more interest in our problem up here.
Thank you, Mike. Dale?
There's nobody in this room that appreciates high-speed internet more than I. It took me 17 years to get my bachelor's degree in journalism. It took me 1 calendar year to get my master's degree, and the biggest difference in that is the development of the internet in between those times. So I believe that there is a huge amount of talent and entrepreneurial energy out there that could come to the fore and create jobs and create incomes in these more rural areas if we can get a good high-speed internet to all parts of the community. And I believe that we could bring our county commission meetings by Skype or other means to these far-flung areas in the community so that each and every one of them could attend each and every council commission meeting if they wanted to and be able to use their 3 minutes on 3-minute comment so that it's not only the people that can get to the courthouse on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock and they be the only ones that can participate in our government. So high-speed internet is going to be the critical difference in whether we continue to be a distressed county or whether we actually come to the fore and hit hyperspeed like I know we can.
Bill?
Straight answer is please contact your governor. I joined him at a meeting in La Push where they were receiving high-speed internet. Also, please contact Derek Kilmer. I met with him specifically to encourage him, explaining we don't even have a radio station. We can't even get radio unless it's via internet out there. He's waiting for a proposal and stated clearly that he would support a proposal.
Do any of you wish to add another 30 seconds? Dale?
I would just like to say we do have an excellent radio station in Forks.
Mike?
Well, the expanse of broadband, and if we are capable of getting 5G networks as fast as many communities, that'll be the next technological advance. But it ties to so many things, whether it's telemedicine, distance learning for place-bound people, job skill development, tourism promotion. A lot of our economy can be helped by extending broadband.
Okay, we'll go back over here for the next question.
Hi, Marilee Smith, Port Angeles. This is an $80,000 a year job, right? I'm mostly interested in what your qualifications are of handling budgets and what the largest budgets you've ever had handled before, and also how good you are at understanding finances. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Dale, would you go first on this one?
I was in the construction business for 15 years in Tennessee, and I guess we would gross about $500,000 a year, and that's probably the biggest budget that I've dealt with. However, I don't think that the Clallam commissioners are going to be the ones that are crunching the numbers for the budget. I think they're going to be dealing with the bigger ideas, and you're going to have people like Jim Jones or whomever is his successor, and Debbie Cook, who is the budget director, that are going to take the ideas that are put forth by the commissioners and put them into the actual terms. And then once you look at them on paper, the budget is the most important instrument that comes out of the county commission, because that determines what is going to be the lifeblood for the different segments and different departments in the county. So no, I don't have a great deal of finance in $100 million like we have in the county treasury. But I'm a quick study. As I said, I did complete my master's degree in 1 calendar year, and I think I can get up to speed reasonably quick.
Bill?
My background is managing timberland, and I am the cost center. It was about $100 million in sales per year, and I'm very comfortable with the level of financial management that the commissioners work with. I am very interested in looking at how we're using our money, and one of the things I pick up on is that all of the departments have their own individual that's collecting financial information, but it's not being consolidated. And so the comment that you made, Dale, with regard to the Finance Committee, today the discussion was 2 people, not adding staff, 2 people that are going to be coordinating the flow of information. And there's a genuine need for that. If you take a look at the predicted variances, are we really in a deficit when we take a look at some of the financial information that's being presented? I don't think so. I'm very used to very detailed financial analysis, and what I pick up on is that we don't have that information at the commissioner level. Thank you.
Mike?
Serving for numerous terms as county commissioner, I had a lot of experience, not just with the county budget, but because of this RC&D group that handled federal, state, and local grants. Some experience there also, but also people from Jefferson were watching us. And in the Resource Advisory Committee to the Forest Service, there were 5 sets of county commissioners watching where the money was going and were they getting their fair share. I have some experience with the state budget, not a lot, but when you testify every session for grants, you talk to the staff people usually beforehand, and at the end of the day, Governor Gregoire recognized that when she created a budget transformation committee, toured the state looking for ways to better manage state government and have a more transparent budget. I was the only elected official from the local level appointed to that. I have some experience with federal budgets, usually with grants, but in another case I was a principal investigator of a solution network project for NASA. And we had very strict guidelines because it was a proof of concept grant. And so it was very difficult, but every month we had very strict guidelines on that grant. We didn't want to lose it. So we were just, probably once a week we had a briefing session making sure we were getting all the paperwork in and the deliverables that went quarter by quarter. So very experienced for a county commissioner.
Each of you has another 30 seconds if you wish to add something or rebut what you've heard. Dale?
The comment that rings in my head right now is coordinating the flow of information. Some of you may know there were 16 different documents that came out of the courthouse, 16 official documents that said that the last $900,000 grant coming out of the Opportunity Fund was going to build a Boys and Girls Club, and it wasn't. And it was going to, well anyway, the 16 different documents came out, all bogus, all false, and even the official notice that went to the newspaper said that this $900,000 was going to build a Boys and Girls Club. When I asked Commissioner Peach, what do you think about these 16 different erroneous documents coming out? And Bill said, typographical error.
Mike?
Well, one of the things I've learned in government, out of government, is that graphics help me learn. I don't know about all of you, but if I can get a truthful graphic before I read a long, boring, negative narrative, it helps a lot. So the county should do more of that at budget time to bring about some interest when the county typically holds its 3 hearings across the county, including in the road budget. So I think that's one of the things we should do and mount those on the website before the public hearings so people have a better idea where the money is going and where it's coming from.
Bill?
One of the things that I've initiated is to take a hard look at the revenue that's going to go to your fire departments, hospital, all of the junior taxing districts by having the DNR provide a forecast. One of the things that I helped the past treasurer with was she received an invoice from DNR, $90,000, no backup. Absolutely outrageous. I brought the issue to the CFO for the DNR, and there was a resolution that took place. It takes that kind of investigation, and that's one of the things that was absent, Mike, during your service.
Our next question over here.
So Ed Bowen, out on the way far west end of the 3rd District, and I have the most desire that my commissioners respect the intent and language in the county's charter. That's very valuable to me. But secondly is my Board of County Commissioners in dealing with the core services. So I would ask you, how do you think you might address the unfunded road projects on the Transportation Improvement Program as a core service? Thank you.
Bill, will you take this first?
I just recently have asked for an update on the spending in the roads department. They do have a reserve. It's healthy, very healthy. But that doesn't mean you can spend money without being asked the question, Today we were asked to approve a $1 million variance from the budget and the tip. And the pushback was, fine, we're going to have a public hearing on this, and there'll be a good explanation to the public before we consider anything like that. So the issue is financial management, and what I'm stressing is to look out a number of years to answer the question, what other projects in the county are going to come up and have a priority? And I think they're really important.
Mike?
Well, actually, you can do that. There's a 6-year program and an annual program, and the annual program changes far more. But you can look ahead if you take the time to look through it and talk to the engineer. So I'd advise people to do that prior to the hearing. It'll be in the fall. If you want to do that, look at the annual and then look at the 6-year. You can project where some of these problems are going to be as far as unfunded. Now, another way to solve that problem is to have access to other money. Now, because we have a healthy reserve in our road department, we have what could be the match for other state funds. And many grant programs have some discretionary money. And if you have a good record of delivering on their money, you can sometimes get a little extra. You know, the biggest project in the history of Clallam County for the road department was the Elwha Bridge. The tribe had a couple of grants because of upper housing, some other things. The state had some money. There was a little bit of federal money, but at the end of the day, we were $2 million short. Well, I established a little trust with people at DOT, particularly the region. So we had a meeting in Olympia. At the end of the day, they gave us some of their discretionary money. So we didn't have to borrow on a $20 million project. So it's not only understanding the budget, but having the trust and relationships with other people where they can help you in local government perform your duties.
I think that roads are one of those main things that governments are in business for. And roads have more to do with economic development than maybe many other things. When you go out looking for a home, if it's at the end of a rutted road that may not drain properly and may not be accessible in the bad weather, you're not going to buy that house out there, and you're not going to develop a business on a road that is not easily accessible by the public. So it is very important, and I know that one of the ways that you can achieve some type of parity with road building and where they are placed or improved is by getting a set of priorities together that everyone can agree upon, and then work through this set of priorities, knowing that they can change, they might change, but not have them become something that, well, this commissioner, it's his turn to get a road done, or this commissioner, it's his turn to get a road done, like they're doing with the sewer system. So if you can get a priority list, agree on it, and not change it except for really necessary reasons, then we can probably move ahead on this.
Do any of you want to use another 30 seconds? Bill?
My background includes 2 engineering degrees and an MBA. I do have the ability to do financial analysis. The document or the reporting system that you talked about, Mike, was very poor quality when I first stepped in. It showed only the projects that had 100% funding, yet they knew about twice that amount of work and was going to occur every single year. So I've actually implemented a system of forecasting and monitoring to answer the question, are we spending everything?
Mike?
So I just recommend you can learn for yourself and look at the funded projects, knowing your neighborhood, your issue, your road, whatever your concern is, and then look at the unfunded and talk to the engineer and ask what's their estimate of when that project that you're interested in will move up. Sometimes it's based upon the numbers of wrecks, cars will go off the road, or fatalities, so you kind of get an idea if you have a good chance or not. Get your neighborhood organized, and sometimes there are ways like the Road Improvement District that you can actually start an initiative on your own through the neighborhood and get your road up to standards. Now you're going to pay an annual fee to get that completed if you use that second one, but there are some ways neighborhoods can improve their own roads.
Dale?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Our next question's over here.
Oh, I'm Bill Atkinson from Port Angeles. I hope I make 30 seconds here. What problem and of the additional taxpayer dollars does the super financial executive that y'all have proposed solve?
Mike, would you take this first?
Well, this is a proposal by the current Board of Commissioners, so I'd say Bill should go first.
You're deferring to him, all right? Go ahead, Bill.
The issue is the procedure taken in the past to deal with the change in costs and revenues was to simply say, let's decrease the number of hours that staff work. They didn't actually address some real core issues. One of them, as an example, is if you have a grant for a specific amount of money and you delay the activity on that grant, there's a percentage of that grant that goes to the general fund. But no one reports that status. And that is a problem. It is, because there's a spending that's associated with it that is not occurring. And all it really takes is somebody sitting down to each of those programs on a monthly basis. You add it up, it's millions.
Dale?
Would you repeat that?
How many MBAs do you have, sir?
Well, it seemed like with an MBA you would be able to answer the question, which was why this new chief financial officer, what problems does he solve? And that's another one of those things, it's a solution going searching for a problem. I'm much more comfortable knowing that 4 or 5 offices, constitutional offices, state required offices, are putting together the budget and determining the assessment of properties and determining the level of taxation, and also helping to determine how to spend these taxes. I'm very uncomfortable with all of that coming into the power of one person, because, you know, people are infallible, and I mean, people are fallible, and people make mistakes, and sometimes they get caught, sometimes they don't. I think this county has a reputation for treasurers stealing gobs of money, so let's not make it easy for that to happen again.
Mike?
So, since statehood, Washington was generally a populist state. As people came west, started the new state, we created a lot of elected officials. Insurance commissioner, public lands commissioner, office of public instruction are statewide elected officials. No business would form that way. They'd have a direct chain of command. Well, this is a holdover, but I believe in it. So you have 3 elected officials who have to face the voters, the treasurer, the auditor, and the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, who have to be responsible in the Finance Committee for these large sums of money. I'm a little hesitant to support something where you would take that away and replace it with a person, I don't want to say bureaucrat, but a staff person under the Board of Commissioners. If you watch some of the distribution and more of the process of the Opportunity Fund, I'd say the voters should keep their eye on who is handling that money. You know, there were 3 pool projects funded out of the Opportunity Fund. That fund was not intended for those kinds of projects. It was hardcore economic development. And it's the state's share of the state sales tax that funds that money, and we need that money. So federal grants prohibit pools and golf courses for that sort of the money from the federal government. So I think we should be a little more strict here, and I certainly would rather have elected officials watching over that money.
Bill, do you wish to add something?
I appreciate the fact that I didn't make it simple, so I will do that. Cash flow is the difference between revenue and cost. We don't have a system that marries those 2 departments, revenue and costs. That's what we're trying to achieve.
Dale?
The most important thing about the finances of the county is that they be taken in a fair manner, and they be spent in a manner that is going to do the most good for the most people in these communities. And I might add too that the Opportunity Fund has already been overextended. It's built a $10 million sewer, it's built these pools, it's built the part of the infrastructure out of this new housing development, and that law sunsets, I think, in 2023. So we've already overextended that. If the legislature doesn't renew that law, that's going to go back on your backs.
Mike, 30 seconds.
Well, I agree with Dale. Some counties bonded that money when it was created. That fund was created 10 or 12 years ago. Our county decided we would leverage it longer rather than just bond it for one project. But previous boards, the Chapman, Theringer, Doherty board, had kind of a gentleman's agreement. We discussed it in public, but we kept the reserve fairly healthy in case things came up, like an emergency with the Clallam Bay Sewer Project, which is occurring soon. So we would have leveraged that for more state money or federal money because we kept some money in the reserve. And again, when the legislature reconsiders it, as Dale mentioned, they're going to be looking at how did counties spend that money? Was it for hardcore economic development, helping rural areas, or was it for lesser priority projects?
Thank you. We have a question over here.
Thank you. I'm Norma Turner from Port Angeles. So I just want to ask, as county commissioners, to blend the idea of budget and law enforcement. I've always been fascinated that as a county of 70,000 people, we have a sheriff, 3 city police departments, tribal police, the immigration, border patrol. I mean, we have unlimited law enforcement folks. Could you folks think about getting a task force together about how they might kind of cooperate? Remember, we spent $9 million to build 2 cells out there at the border patrol? I bet you they could have spent less than that if they did it at the sheriff's office. Thank you.
Dale, would you take this one first?
Did you say Bill?
No, I said Dale. I'm keeping track on here. Everyone gets an equal shot.
Nice try, nice try. You know, we do spend a lot more for law enforcement. And as Will Rogers once said, aren't you glad you're not getting all the government you pay for? We do have the federals here, the states here, the cities here, the counties here, the tribals here, and all of those have their own law enforcement budgets. Boy, I'm on the spot now because this is something I've thought about for a while. There are a lot of those that can be either joined together or have at least better agreements. For instance, in the city of Port Angeles, you've got a chief of police that makes about $130,000 a year, and then you've got an assistant chief that makes about $115,000 a year, and that department's not big enough to have those two positions. One of those needs to go back to work and go, one of those positions could make 2 patrol positions. So I don't know exactly how you would do this countywide, but I think you could do some of the same consolidation for the fire departments, for the ambulances, and for all the public services that we depend on. And we're paying for duplication at several different levels. And once I'm elected, I will begin a study to try to find out some amelioration for that, at least by my 4th year in office.
Mike?
So there are statutes that allow consolidation and mergers. It's just when it gets proposed, it's usually the smaller government doesn't want to give up their sheriff or their police chief in most cases. Our sheriff has made the offer to Forks, for instance, that his deputies could patrol Forks, but Forks isn't ready yet to give up their police chief position. So it could happen. Personally, I'd love to be involved in a study looking at that to show what the savings might be, but there would be some pushback from the smaller communities.
Bill?
One of the examples of consolidating resources is currently occurring with the prosecuting attorney's office. I'm glad you asked the question because that's the evolution that I see in government 5, 10, 20 years from now. There is a duplication of services, and the way to decrease the cost to the taxpayer is to try as much as possible to consolidate. The issue that we were addressing is that you could go to the Safeway at one location and have the same exact crime at a Safeway in another location and end up with 2 separate sentences. How equitable is that? We attempted to address the issue and things were working quite well until we had a change in the legislature. And that has caused us to sit down to a conversation nobody anticipated, a revenue stream that has now disappeared. So it's a test of the concept that you're asking us about. And I really think the one to watch is how we resolve the current relationship that we have with the cities of Port Angeles and Sequim.
I'd like to call the question session to an end, but if each of you could stay within 30 seconds, you could do a rebuttal on this issue or further comment. Nope, nope, fine, thank you. Okay, we will now be moving on to our candidates' 2-minute closing statements. We'll reverse the order from the opening statements and begin with Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for doing another fine job of bringing this forum out and also for videotaping it and making it available for pop-up viewers. You know, my entire adult life has been in service to my communities. I have devoted the years that I've been here in Port Angeles to charitable duties. In fact, we started the Port Angeles Historical Society with the sole intention of restoring this old fire hall where this Papa Studios. We put together a board and started Peninsula Area Public Access, which is the first public access channel in Clallam County. And what it does is allows the people in the community to tell their own stories in their own voices. And this is everyone in the county. Some of the first were the Lower Elwha tribe. Gave some beautiful tapes on their language. I have started the first construction arts program at one of the tribal schools. So my time here has been spent with an eye toward the future. And that's why I'm over here now where I'm at, because my eyes are still toward the future. I still have a lot of energy, I still have a lot of ideas, and I still have a lot of ambition. I still have a lot of goals that I think that once they're communicated, I think you will share them. And I'm pretty sure you'll let me know the ones that you think are not good ideas, but the ones that are good ideas, we can join together, we can unite the communities that may or may not have the same goals in mind, try to determine what are those things that we do have in common that we can agree upon, and work toward those first. So I'm a community builder. I've given the last 5 years to dedicated volunteer service. Just think what I could do if I had a paycheck for it.
Mr. Doherty?
Thank you. So hope on your way out, you'll grab one of these little cards and maybe go to mikedoherty.info. And then this other little item will tell you a little bit about qualifications for office and what I would hope to do. And more importantly, it recounts some of these committees where fellow county commissioners across the state and in our region elected me for multiple years to head organizations that handled a lot of money but also funded some very good projects. And because of the way I was able to facilitate those groups, we had people actually sharing their money for more important projects than just taking their own narrow points of view. And people appreciated that when we could get more bang for the buck at different times in different counties, or doing things as a region. So I think that pays off, and it's a successful strategy going into the future. So again, my name's Mike Doherty. I've served you before. I think I know the potential of the office and what an active commissioner can do. I would have taken a position on Kinder Morgan. I would have worked on net neutrality. I would have tried to get more important projects going in resource restoration. There's a lot of potential there for employment of young kids in our communities, on the reservations. It's a way to address the future, do some green things, but in the end, it's economical for our area. And it ties to tourism. People come here because of the beauty. Right now, some areas are going to need a lot of restoration work before they're going to visit some of those river areas, some of those shoreline areas. So it's one of those areas that I would work for. Again, I think I'd welcome you to look at my past record, give me a call, email me, and I'd be glad to answer your questions or come out and talk about some project you have in mind that's either on the unfunded road project list or a budget problem that you might have alluded to tonight. Thanks, and thanks for coming tonight.
Mr. Peach.
Thanks very much to the League of Women Voters for this very organized opportunity for me to learn. And I do appreciate everyone here coming and listening. It tells me that you really care, and that I appreciate, because I care very much. I consider it an honor to serve you. And what you'll see different from me than other candidates is I'm not here to sell my party's position to you or a special interest group. I'm here to work for you. I hope you remember that when it's time to vote, and I thank you for considering me as your next county commissioner.
Would you all remain seated, and would you please hold your applause for just a moment, because we've got some important closing announcements. On behalf of the League, I want to thank you candidates for running for office and for appearing here this evening. I want to thank our donors down in front for the excellent attention they paid to all of this. And I'd also like to invite any candidates who are running for other offices in the general election as well, who are here in the audience, to stand, state your name and the office you're running for. As I said earlier, we're only dealing with primaries at this point, but your ballot will be much longer. I know there's one here.
I'm Mary Ellen Winborn. I'm the Director of Community Development, and I'm running for a second term. So yes, please vote for me. Thank you.
I'm Jim McLaughlin. I'm running for sheriff. I'm a retired detective, 2 years. Time for change.
My name is Rachel Ringer, and I'm running as a Democrat PCO for Bellevue Precinct, which is 205.
Thank you. And remember, primary ballots will be mailed this Wednesday, July 18th, and your marked ballot must be placed in a drop box or postmarked no later than August 7th. This year, ballots will have prepaid postage, so voters will not need to apply a stamp. Please remind your family, your friends, your neighbors to cast their votes as well. For those unable to be at our forum, tell them that it can be viewed on our league website. For those who have moved since the last election or who need to register, July 30th is the last day to register in person at the Clallam County Auditor's Office. I also want to tell you that the League of Women Voters of Washington State has developed a new resource that will help voters make important ballot decisions. It's called vote411.org. It's a nonpartisan online voter guide that offers balanced and relevant information on candidates and issues that are appearing on voters' ballots. All candidates have been encouraged to post their answers to questions on issues facing their local communities. You can pick up vote411.org bookmarks on the League membership table to get further details. Please do visit our membership table on your way out and consider joining our organization. Donations are also very welcome, as that's what finances our ability to continue to offer these forums. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience and your participation. You are a great community.